Thanks for coming along. Good to have those that can make it here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our iSeries Energizer range and a new addition to our Energizers, the MB1000. So yeah, hope you enjoy it. So who am I? So my name's Brian. I'm the product manager for our Energizers at Gallagher Group in New Zealand. And yeah, I'm going to be presenting to you today. So you'll notice go to webinar. If you have any questions along the way, then please enter them into the bar there that you can see, and I'll most likely get to them at the end. So what we're going to cover off today is an overview of the iSeries system. We're going to talk briefly about the Energizer controller, the remote and fault finder, our fence monitors, our SMS unit and our alarm system, and then I'll move into the MB1000 and discuss that new product addition, and hopefully some time at the end for a few questions from you guys. So the iSeries system is made up of a few different components. What we kind of see there in front of us is what I'd call the core of the system, if you like. So we've got the Energizer itself, the controller, which we can show all the information about the Energizer, what's happening on the fence, what's happening on various zones on the property, on the fence. So these are the zones. Then we've got a bar chart, which gives you an indication of the performance of the fence. And then we've got our fence monitors, which are what are used to monitor those individual zones, and the remote that you can use to, one, fault find, and two, measure the voltage on the fence. I'll talk a little bit more about each of those in detail. A couple other accessories, if you like, is the SMS Energizer controller and the alarm system. So these are more of like a monitoring tool. SMS obviously giving you feedback and messages back to your phone, and then the alarm system, a way of monitoring the fence, and might be sirens or strobes or lights that are available to indicate to you when something's occurred. So a little bit about the Energizers. So within the range, we've got, if you like, two different enclosure sizes, which are dictated by these models: the 1200i, 1800i, and 2800i, and then the larger ones being the 5800i and the 10,000i. So we've got a couple of LEDs up here just to show the status, and then easy, simple connection of your terminals for your fence, your earth, and then your earth reference. So these are high-performing products. They've got adaptable control, and they've been through a rigorous testing process and program that we do with all of our Energizers to make sure they're fit for purpose to perform in the field. So the controller, as I mentioned, by default it comes with a 3-meter cable which plugs into the back of the Energizer. The idea is that you can put that outside and on the outside of a shed or an area where you go past regularly, so you can see what's happening on your fence. So got the bar chart, like I mentioned, the voltage that's being out for the Energizer on the fence. You've got the current. That current there is reflective of the load, so how much load is on the fence. So the bigger the load or the bigger area of the fence, the bigger that number will be. The earth, if you've got your earth reference terminal connected on the Energizer, I'll go back, this one here, then if you scroll across using the arrows to the earth symbol, it will display a voltage which tells you the earth return voltage of that Energizer. So ideally you're looking to get that down sort of in the region of sort of 200-300 volts to say that you've got an effective earth. 1, 2, 3 all the way up to 6 can represent different zones you've got installed on your fence, and that's related to the fence monitors, which I'll talk more about as well. So if you arrow across and select these zones, then you'll see the voltage and the current measured for that zone at that point along the fence. And then the little lightning bolt here is the Energizer itself. So when again you arrow across, so the little arrow is on the lightning bolt, then it's showing you the performance of the Energizer itself. You can extend this controller to be up to 50 meters away from the Energizer. So if you've got a longer RJ12 cable and a little adapter which you can buy from an electrical wholesaler, then you can extend that out to be up to 50 metres long. It'll survive the environment, it's waterproof. Yeah. And also, should mention as well, if you go into settings, which is this button here, you can set up the alarms that the Energizer will alert out if you like. So if you do have an SMS controller, then you'll get that message sent through to you by that means, or alternatively the Energizer itself will go into alarm. The little light here will go red when you've got your iSeries remote, which we'll talk about on the fence. It will again show which one of these zones here is an alarm. So the alarm can be set of one of two ways. One is a voltage threshold, so it's a voltage that if the fence falls below, then an alarm will be raised, or alternatively it's a current. So when the current goes above a certain point, e.g. there's a fault on the fence, maybe a tree or a branch is falling on the fence, and that will cause that current to increase. So again, you can set an alarm based on that. So the remote I touched on, so great for turning the fence on and off from anywhere on your property. So a good thing about that is if you do discover a fault, you can easily turn that fence off, do the repair, and then turn the fence back on. A great way, rather than having to go all the way back to the Energizer, turn the power up, go all the way down there, fix the fault, and go back again. So it saves time, and so it's great to have. The I button receives the alarm status. So what I mentioned before, if there's a fault, it will find it in these zones, will flash to indicate where there is a fault. It's built-in fault finder as well. So if you do know your fence isn't performing well and you think there's a fault, then you can use this remote and use the directional arrows and the current and the voltage to find out exactly where on your property that fault is occurring. Fence monitors. Fence monitors are a great tool for being able to segment a larger property into what we call zones. So zones allow you to easily determine where there is issues on your property or where there's been changes in the performance of your fence. So you can have up to 6 fence monitors per iSeries Energizer, and where you want to position them is dependent on how your fence and how your property is set up. So what they're effectively doing is they're like having a remote, like I showed you before, or a fault finder permanently on a section of fence. So it reports back in by default every 180 minutes, so every 3 hours, and says, I've got so much voltage and so much current in this zone. They run off batteries, so AA batteries, there's 6 of them. Kind of expect to get 1 to 2 years of life out of those batteries. It is a little bit dependent on how often it has having to report in, e.g. how often a fault occurs or something occurs that it goes and reports a message. To set them up in their zones, there's a rotary switch located just underneath the cover. That cover is just a slide, so it slides up and down, and you just select between 1 and 6, and it will then show up on the controller. And also if there's an alarm, then it shows up on that remote, and that's all reflective of that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. A little bit of metal here is just a little deterrent. If you like, if an animal starts sniffing around or pushing on it, then it will get a shock on its nose or it's on its head. So it's just a way to kind of deter the animal from putting pressure onto the product here. There was a question I just noticed. I'll just touch on it about the remote. The question was, does the arrow point to the fault? So the arrow points to the direction where the most current is flowing. So you do follow that arrow, but if there's a junction, that current will then branch. So you have to say, well, if it's, for example, up here we've got 21 amps on the display. So you may follow that to a junction and find it branches, and you may have 10 amps going in one direction, and, or let's say 17 amps going in one direction and 4 going in the other. So it's telling you that the most current is flowing in that direction. So really what you get to, if you're checking periodically at different locations on the fence, if you keep finding that 17, you may skip, I don't know, 50 meters and then check another point, and it's telling you that it's now 16 amps back the other direction. So it's all trying to pinpoint and trying to hone in on the section of fence where that error has occurred, or where that maximum load is causing that current to flow. So it's a great tool, but you do need to think about which direction the current's flowing, how much wire have I got in certain directions versus another to work through what's happening. On multi-wire fences as well, so you've got 3 hot wires on one fence, and ideally connected in parallel at the start and the end, then that current will be the total. So if you've got 1 wire coming in, which might be that 21 amps again, and then that's splitting into 3 wires, you'd expect the current from all 3 to add up to be 21 amps. I think I covered most of that off. So location-wise, so where do we put our fence monitors? So there's a couple scenarios I've kind of pulled up here, and one on the left I'd call a more simple system, whereas I've put my fence monitors at the start near the Energizer, and I've split my property effectively into 2 zones. So I've got a central, if you like, race or a laneway up the middle, and then I've got my fence on the left segregated for the fence on my right. So all I've done is I've taken the, if you like, the lead out from the Energizer, and I've connected to one fence monitor and to another, and then on the exited out of the fence monitor and connect to either the section of fence on the right or the section of the fence on the left. So if I call this one here zone 1, position 1 on the rotary dial, then that would show up as 1 on the Energizer controller, 1 on the fence monitor, etc. And this was 2, then it would show up as 2. So at any time I go to my Energizer controller and I arrow across to 1, it'll tell me the voltage and current that is being consumed in zone 1. And whereas if I look at 2, it'll show me the voltage and current which is being consumed in zone 2. So that's quite a simple setup, but very effective to let you know what's happening on your different areas of your property. So we go to the more complicated scenario that I've got here, where we've got 4 fence monitors. What we've done is called 1 still the same, so 1's still that complete area, and 2 again is the complete area, but 3 and 4 are a smaller subset of those individual zones. So what that means, if I see a increase in current on 1 and 3, then it's likely to be in section 3 because both have gone up. If I only see an increase in, sorry, I got that right way around, I've got to think about that now. If I see an increase in 1 and 3, then it could be either sort of in 3 and 1. If it's just an increase in 1, yeah, then it'll be through into 3. So you just have to think through it. It's actually confusing now I think about it now as well. It's very confusing to work through. But you can configure like that. So the last couple more things here, the SMS controller. So SMS controller, great for getting that information at your fingertips back to you wherever you are of what is happening with the performance of your fence. So you can see the status of your Energizer any time you send a message, and it will send back and tell you what's happening at the Energizer and what's happening on your zones. And again, if you want to have your alarm set up, if that voltage falls below any of those thresholds, you'll get those text messages coming back to you stating which zones have been affected. So if you're receiving that information, you can possibly send someone else to look at what's occurring on your fence. The alarm system. So the alarm system, you connect up to the fence wire. You can use this obviously with iSeries, which is fantastic, but you can actually use it with a non-iSeries Energizer as well. If you use it with iSeries, you can connect the SMS unit to this and you'll get those text messages coming through. Or alternatively, you use these outputs, if you like, these terminals, and you can connect up a siren or a strobe. And when an alarm occurs, then there's relays inside there which switch over, and sirens flash, and yeah, lights flash, sirens go off, and it can be a good trigger These can also be configured into another external system, if you like, if you have a very advanced monitoring system or service that can configure an input into another system to alert when something's occurred. There's a little bit of configuration that can happen, so to do that, there's a dip switches that are inside, so a few screws do need to be undone from the back, and you can switch the dip switches to perform how you want it to. So I'll move now into the MB1000 and give you a little bit of information on what's been going on with that product. So the MB1000 is using a lot of that iSeries knowledge and, if you like, reliability and history we've got through that product. But we've taken a lot of that and we've made a mains and battery capable unit. So we sell this as battery only, as it comes by default, but there is a mains adapter which you can purchase separately to then run it off mains as well if you wish to do that. There's a lot of smarts which have gone into this unit, how to manage the battery. So we don't want to have a case where we connect it up to a battery and it just runs until that battery goes completely flat. We don't want that to happen. So we're looking at how we manage it as the battery voltage gets down. We look at using some of the sophistication as we have done in our solar Energizer range to allow that to last longer and preserve that battery. And another way we can do that is this Energizer is great to install as a solar setup. So in a solar setup, we're managing that battery. We've got energy coming in from the sun, and then we've got the usage of the battery, and the Energizer can balance that out to make sure you get the optimum performance that you can. A key thing to note here with this unit though is it is not compatible with iSeries accessories, so you can't run the controller or the SMS or fence monitors with this unit. This is a battery mains unit only. So I touched on the smart battery, so a little bit of detail without digging too deep into it. So as the battery capacity falls, so you imagine you've got this set up and what this means, no sunlight. Say you didn't have a solar install, so you've got no panel at all you've done is connected it to a battery. So in this case, a 100 amp hour battery for this 10 joule Energizer. As that battery voltage falls down, at some point the stored energy will drop around 60% capacity from 10 joules to 5 joules. And then as it decays away more, so after we're talking around 12, 13 days, the pulse interval will stretch out to 10 seconds. And then after another 2 days, the Energizer will stop. So you've effectively got 16 days of operation. So again, you can see that over here just displayed a little bit differently, that after it's like 4 days, that pulse interval, the stored energy drops to 5 joules, but it will always stay at 5 joules from that point on. And then at that same point, the pulse interval goes up slightly to 4 seconds, and then at 13 days, it clicks over to, it's set out to 10 seconds, but that's only just to give you another couple of days of it just ticking just barely in case you're almost there to change that battery or you're almost there to connect up a solar panel or something like that. So we're really trying to give you the absolute most opportunity to get the most out of that unit that you possibly can. So a couple of examples that we've got. So an MB1000 in March to September is recommending a 60 watt panel and a 105 amp hour battery. So that'll allow that performance of the Energizer to keep working through that period. Some of those smarts that I talked about will help keep that performance at the best it can. So maybe you've got a few days in there where the sun just doesn't shine at all. Well, that energy may drop down a little bit, but your battery is still going to be protected and maintained. And when that sun comes back, the solar panel is going to take over, it's going to drive the voltage back up, and everything's going to carry on with the operation that you expect. And similar again down below for a year-round operation, a much bigger panel and a bigger battery, but that's because you're having to get through that winter period where there's just not as much sun available. So a question that we often get is how do I best connect my solar panels? Well, what do I do? How do I connect together? How do I know it's going to work? So the solar panels have a regulator generally attached to them. On the back, there'll often be a box there will be a box, and that regulates the voltage that comes out of the panel. Because the open circuit voltage that comes out of solar panels by default is often greater than 20 volts, and if you connect that directly to these batteries, then it's not going to work. So the panels that are supplied have an inbuilt regulator. What that means is that if you like 20 odd volts is regulated down to a voltage which is suitable to charge your batteries. One thing to be aware of is multiple panels, which often will be the case, especially if you're doing a larger system like this. You need to make sure they have the same output voltage. So Gallagher panels will be matched like that, so you won't have an issue, but if you do think you can pick up a panel elsewhere and use it, which generally I wouldn't recommend because there's some unknowns, then you have to be aware of that. So the panels get connected in parallel, so directly across your battery bank, across the positive and the negative of the entire battery system. So what's important with the batteries is that they're connected, if you like, in series or in a line. So you connect the positive to the positive and the negative to the negative, and then your panels are connected across the entire system. So you don't want to connect the red one to there and the black one to there like that, because you're not really connecting across the total of the batteries. And you imagine if you added another battery on here and you had another red there and another black to there, you'd then want to connect from that one across to this one, then you across the whole system. And the reason for that is you want to keep those batteries balanced. You want all the charge of the solar panels going across the entire battery bank, and you want the Energizer pulling the energy out of the battery across the entire battery bank. And that's, as I say, because you want to keep everything balanced. If you don't do that, you run the risk of one of these batteries becoming over discharged or damaged, which will then drag the rest of the system down. So a little bit of an example just of what we've been doing with these units. So with these MB1000 units, we've had multiple setups with large panels on test for a long period of time, testing that algorithm and looking at the amount of backup days and hours we get, how it responds to different sunlight conditions. What happens if I put lots of solar panels on the unit, or what happens if I put little solar panels on the unit? Is it going to last? So again, it's an important thing that we do to make sure that these products that we then deliver to you are going to last and going to be reliable. Because there's always the instance with something like a solar panel that what happens when one of them gets covered, or a bird's come and, you know, covered some of the solar cells, so it's not performing at optimum. Is your battery still going to be protected? Are you still going to maintain the animals on your fence? So we're looking at those type of scenarios to make sure that the system is going to work. So a lot of these have been running since September 2016, and we've been experimenting with an 80 watt in New Zealand here and 130 watt. So those won't necessarily be the solar panels that you use in Europe, but I just wanted to show you some of the work that we've been doing with the testing. So that's an example of an installation that we've done. So we've got an MB1000 mounted up with a solar panel on a wooden post, and then you can't see it, but the battery's down below the post, and it all just plugs in. So unfortunately the webcam, sorry, it never came up. No. Just checking it wasn't going to work now. I can't show you the unit very well, but there's a DC plug here. So that is an inline, if you like, inline DC jack. So you just plug it into the Energizer. So there's a little tail which just dips down to this point here, and that wire set just plugs in like that. So, and then that sort of just comes down, and it's actually running down the post in this instance, stapled down, and to the battery that's on the ground. And alternatively as well, if you did purchase the mains adapter for a mains application, again it just plugs into this slot here. And these are just the lead out wires for the ground and the earth plugging in. So that's really a lot of it, but just a couple other snippets around that. We are looking, you know, we sort of started something here with the MB1000 as far as a unit which can run off 12 volt. sort of gives us a lot of flexibility as far as anyone who wants a 12 system, but also wants the ability to plug into mains. So we are looking at, you know, some other possible accessories to go with that, and as well kind of looking to we grow that range a little bit further and look at the type of energy like the 1800i and the 2800i type product. So we'll see how that kind of develops over time, but we're not just stopping with this one MB unit. So yeah, kind of watch there what we do in the future. Should be good. That was really the majority of the content I had there. I'm really sorry about the webcam, because I did have the product here I could show you and talk to, which would have been a little bit easier, but happy to take any questions which anyone may have there. So a few things here. Wait a second. What's the difference between the reference earth and the normal earth? So the reference earth is just a measurement. So it's the measurements of the performance of your earth system. So it doesn't replace your existing earth. You still need your existing earth as the return point for, if you like, the current to complete the circuit. So when the animal touches the fence and a shock is delivered, then all the current has to return through the animal, through the ground, and back through the earth, not through the reference earth. The reference earth is just testing to see how well your standard earth is performing. I answered the question about the arrow pointer to the fault on the fault finder. Fence monitor, can you also put it at the end of the fence? No, not really. You can put it at the end of the fence, but it's not going to measure anything, because it needs to measure the current that is on, if you like, on the other side of the fault finder, of the fence monitor, sorry. But yeah. There's another one here similar to that. With the fence monitor at the end, you will still see the voltage at the end, but it won't show you anything for a zone beyond that, because you do not have a zone beyond that. But it will measure and show you, hey, at that point right there, I do have that voltage. Another one, what happens to the output joules when the stored joules drop to 5 joules? Well, they will drop down as well, so they will come down, but it's really at that point where we're still delivering enough that it is still an effective energizer and system to contain the animals. But it definitely has dropped, but we are doing that so that, one, you're still going to have a battery there, so your energizer is still going to be running, and two, we feel that is adequate to still run the fence and maintain the animals. A couple more here. Is the M1000 an adaptive energizer? Yes, it is. What is the minimum pulse rate at the start? So in battery mode, I'm assuming that's for the MB1000. In battery mode, it will go to 2 seconds, but if you are running off of a mains adapter, which is 15 volts rather than a battery, which may be 12, it will drop down to about 1.6 seconds. Here's another one here. What is the battery consumption? What is the maximum battery consumption? So for the MB1000, you're talking at about 8 watts of power at 12 volts. What is an adaptive energizer? So a good question. I probably should have covered that. So adaptive energizer, what that means is the energizer is going to try and maintain the voltage on the fence, kind of independent of the load, if you like. So if the energizer is running at 7 kV and there's a fault on the fence, the voltage will initially drop, but then the energizer is going to adapt up its output energy. So it's going to try and drive more energy out onto the fence to maintain that voltage at that 7 kV. So with a 10 joule energizer, you'll only get the maximum output on that. It's about 7.8 joules, something like that. So you can only get up to that amount out, but it's going to try and drive that to maintain that voltage. So whereas a non-adaptive energizer, every time it charges up a storage cap and just discharges it out every single time. So it's not going to have the smarts to try and adapt to the conditions of the fence. Question down the number of meetings on the MB1000. It would be quite a few. We might have to come back to you on that on exactly how many it is. I haven't worked that through for an MB1000. Yeah, we might come back to you on that one. I've got your name there. Any other questions from anybody else? All right. You'll see when the webinar ends that it will send you a poll, so interested in what you thought of the suggestions. The suggestion from me is to see that the webcam works properly next time, but it's okay. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for your time, and I do hope you got something out of this and enjoyed the content and the likes. Yeah, interested in feedback, and hopefully you can join us for the next webinar, which is on the 27th of June. Excellent. All right, thank you, everybody.